right, my friends. I think the coaching and consulting industry definitely has a trust problem. I know we're in a trust recession, but I don't think that people are really talking about the real issue. So I just want to give you some context because if people don't trust coaching or consulting, then they'd stop buying it, right? And they haven't. The industry is still growing, it's still booming, and people are still hiring consultants. Big businesses are still investing in subject matter experts, right? So people haven't stopped buying coaching and consulting. What they have started doing is becoming more discerning, and they've stopped giving us the benefit of the doubt. Okay. Now that's a completely different issue. And if you've been trying to fix the trust issue, then I need you to hear me and I need you to know that this episode is for you because you might be trying to solve something that was never really broken.
Booked and unbothered, confidence and courage, mindset and messy little moves of entrepreneurship.
Welcome to the Booked and Unbothered podcast, the podcast for high-value women navigating mindset, marketing, and messy middle moves of entrepreneurship. Here is where we turn clarity into cash and presence into power. I'm your host, Yarden Carroll, mother to 3 amazing boys, wife, storyteller, and brand engineer. Mic on? Let's get into it.
And I want to welcome you back to the Booked and Unbothered podcast. If you're new here, this podcast is for high-value service providers who are solving costly and urgent problems, and they're building profitable businesses without code switching and without having to over-explain their brilliance. I'm your host, Yarden Carroll, and I not only help experts position and package their expertise, I help them build businesses around their capacity. So my promise for you in this episode is to really get into what is driving this trust recession that we're in. And I really want to hand you a completely different lens on what everybody's calling a trust recession. So by the end of this episode, you're not only going to understand what your buyer is actually skeptical about, but why more testimonials and more content is not going to fix the issue. And what you really need to make visible instead so that you can actually have your customer or your ideal client decide if you're the one that they want to hire. All right. So let's just get right into it. Everybody's saying we're in a trust recession. We are. And here's what I think happened. And if you think the problem is that people don't trust coaches anymore, then automatically your instinct is to go to try and prove and work harder to showcase that you're more trustworthy, right? So whether that's posting more screenshots or delivering more how-to content, educational content, it doesn't matter. But if you're trying to convince people that you've been doing this shit for years, I need you to understand what's really happening. That's not what your ideal client needs, especially if they're more discerning, they're smarter, right? So what if he or she's not sitting there thinking, I don't trust coaches? Because they're not. What if they're thinking this instead? I just don't know if I trust you yet. And to be honest with you, that should be fair. And I want you to think about how much somebody has to sort through, especially since we're being inundated with information and information is right at our fingertips. Okay. So it doesn't matter how much content you put out because other people are putting out the same amount of content, the same type of content. So it's really hard to discern who has a signature method, whose framework has worked, what screenshot is real and not doctored by AI. So a story about making a ridiculous amount of money in 12 minutes from the beach has been the standard. That's been the standard for the last 4 or 5 years. So eventually what's happened is the buyers, they're going to start asking questions. And there's been a study that's been conducted that found about 80% of consulting buyers are now using more resources and more sources to research firms than they used to. Not only that, consumers are doing the same fucking thing. Okay. They're not listening to what you say. They're watching how you think, how you show up. They're checking your website. They're checking your competitors. Shit. They're checking ChatGPT. They can get that information. It's readily available to them. So here's the thing. all of this, I need to overcome sales objections and things like that. I need you to know that your buyer is not a difficult buyer. There's someone who is actually doing their due diligence, which they should have been doing. Okay. So we've gotten so used to trying to treat hesitation like an objection that we need to overcome. Maybe some hesitation is just reasonable. And if I'm about to hand you $20,000 to get into your group program, then you should want me to have questions, because the alternative is somebody who is buying off of emotion, and then they get inside your program and they realize this was a big fucking mistake. And you don't want that. Those are not the types of buyers you want to attract anyway. So you should want them to have questions, right? So the real question isn't how do we make skeptical buyers less skeptical? It's what are they really skeptical about, right? Because the research doesn't show that buyers have stopped valuing expertise. It shows the complete opposite. They're looking harder at specialization. They're paying closer attention to case studies, to methodologies, trying to verify whether you can actually solve their specific problem and whether this is actually true. And that's a problem for a lot of really good coaches, because you can be genuinely excellent at what you do and still be hard to evaluate. And you know you're good, your clients know you're good, but you've been doing this for 15 years and you get on a call and you see exactly where somebody's stuck in 20 minutes. But here's the thing, that doesn't really matter. If they can't see it inside your head, if they only have access to you on this discovery call, and this is where so many experienced people accidentally make themselves sound too generic. When you know how to do a lot of things, your instinct is to list everything you know and how you do it. So you're thinking, look at everything I can do. Look at everything I can help you with. But your buyer is actually thinking, I'm like, what the fuck does she actually do? Okay. And that's why positioning is not just a marketing exercise or a marketing service. It's what they really will evaluate you by. Okay. And if I have a specific problem and I find somebody talking about the exact problem and diagnosing it in a different way, showing me things I hadn't even considered, I'm paying attention. And I don't need you to tell me you're an authority 12 times. I'm going to start to determine that myself. And right now, AI is making the gap even larger for people, especially my experts, right? Especially my experts who aren't even visible yet. Because your buyer can Claude this, Manus AI that, ChatGPT how to build an offer or write a sales page, and how to build a content calendar. They can get the instant answer like that. So if the main way you're demonstrating your expertise is by giving people more information that they could fucking get anywhere, that's not going to hold any weight. So I need you to understand there's a huge difference between information and transformation. And people are using discernment and judgment. AI can tell her how to get more leads. An experienced strategist looks at the business entirely and they ask better questions. They ask such detailed, specific questions, nuanced questions that AI could never. So they're asking questions like, why are we trying to get you more leads right now? Like, what is happening right now that you need more leads? Maybe leads aren't the problem. Maybe you're getting attention already, but you're getting attention from the wrong people. Maybe people just don't understand what it is that you do because it's not positioned correct. So that's not about getting information anymore. That's about diagnosing a real fucking problem that you might have, right? So a real strategist can ask those nuanced questions because they've been around the block. They've done this. They're not new to this. They true to this, right? And here's where I think the trust recession, like framing it, really undersells what's really happening. And I think we're moving into a verification economy, if you ask me, because people are not asking you to convince them anymore. They're really looking for enough evidence to make a decision that they feel good about. And if you listen to my last episode, you'll know what the buyer psychology is and what they're going through when they're making these high ticket purchases, because they need the evidence. They need the logic. They need the emotional resonance, and they need to be able to identify themselves not only in your sphere and your content, but they need to be able to identify that you are the right person that can solve their problem. And if evidence doesn't always mean a testimonial, because this person knows you're showing your best testimonials anyway. Of course you are. Nobody's pulling out Denise from my homepage saying working with Yarden was such a great 6 to 10 months. And she got on my nerves twice. Thank you, Denise. We're not using that fucking one, right? Nobody's using that. So the context really starts to matter more than what you claim, right? If somebody doubled their revenue, I'm fucking impressed. But if I still don't know if that has something to do with me, or if you can hold space for me, or if that person had the same problem I had, what kind of business did they have? Where did they start? What actually changed? What did your work and how did you contribute to that? And you don't need to make the claims bigger or grandiose. You really need to make them easier to believe. And those are two different things, my friend. I'm here to tell you. And there's a lot of online marketing that's been taught the complete opposite, where they're like, make the transformation bigger, make the promise sexier, the outcome, make it more dramatic, right? Or throw all this fluffy fucking language in there. Reclaim your time. Find your purpose. Create generational wealth. How, Sway? Heal your inner child. Drink more water by Thursday. Make $60,000 in 60 seconds. What? But what are we actually doing? How are we actually getting the results? And when everybody's making the same fucking giant promises, the person who can clearly explain the problem and the work and the realistic outcome, then it starts sounding completely different. And that's not that boring, watered down marketing shit. That's not the timid marketing. That's that credible shit I'm talking about. I'm talking about going into details. I'm talking about doing case study interviews, video interviews with your ideal clients where you can see it. You can feel them on the screen, right? And I don't want my marketing to make somebody trust me. I don't want to fucking do that. I want to give her enough access to my actual thinking that they can decide for herself whether she trusts me or not. I don't want to be convincing somebody to work with me, right? Trust isn't something you get to declare about yourself. You don't get to write, I'm a trusted expert in your bio and then call it done. You don't get to decide that. The people who need you, they get to decide that. And I think too many coaches stopped thinking that they had to have more or put more effort into their marketing. So it's hard for them to show up because for quite some time, they didn't have to do the work. But now you got to fucking do the work. You got to do the work to cut through the noise. And our job is to stop making that decision so hard for these people to make. That's your job with your marketing. You really have to not only help them overcome objections before they get on a sales call with you, you have to name the thing that they're experiencing so well that they want to come to you. They want to work with you, right? So some key takeaways, like this wasn't a long episode. It wasn't that meaty, but I need you to hear me. There's a trust recession, very much so. It's active, right? But you can change the trajectory of your business if you start marketing differently. The demand has not disappeared. People are still buying. What has changed is they're researching harder. They're slower to make decisions. That's not about demand. That's a signal that is telling you you need to shift your marketing, okay? And your ideal client is telling you, help me make sense of whether you're the right person or not. Is this a logical investment for someone like me? Can you get me results? Can you hold space for me? And the question she's actually asking isn't why coaching, it's why you. And then another bonus, another discount, another urgency or fake sales page is not going to solve this problem. Clarity in your marketing, clarity in your positioning. That's what's going to solve this. Okay. And saying no when you could have taken their money, right? I've had people want to work with me and I have had to decline to work with them or politely tell them no. I could have taken their money, but if you're telling someone this isn't the right offer for you or I'm not the right person for you, not only are you being honest, but you're operating in integrity. And I strongly believe that even though you might be able to close the deal, but if they're not the right fit, you gotta leave them better off than you left them. Okay. That's going to build more trust than almost anything that you could ever post, because that's the behavior of someone who values not only their reputation over a transaction, but they operate and stand in integrity. And if this has reframed something for you, I want you to let this land, and I want to let this sit. It's got to marinate. And not only that, I go deeper in my newsletter on stuff like this every single week. And if you're ready for more than that, if you're ready to actually make your expertise harder for someone to question, but easier for you to close, then you can apply to work with me one-to-one. I'm going to put both the links to join my newsletter and to fill out the application in my show notes. And until next time, I want you to stay booked, stay clear, or get clear, because you got to get clear, but stay booked and stay unbothered. Bye.